Hello everybody and welcome to today's edition of Daf Yomi. Today's Daf is 10a of Shevuot, so let's dive straight in. And through this additional the goats of the festivals are juxtaposed with the goats of the new moons, indicate that just as the goats of the new moons atone for a case involving sacrificial food, i.e. when a richly pure person partook of richly impure sacrificial food, so too the goats of the festivals atone for a similar case involving sacrificial food, i.e. where a richly impure person partook of richly pure sacrificial food. What does that mean? The Milsa de Kodesh. The early commentaries know that the Gemara derives only the case of a richly impure person who defiles sacrificial food by partaking of it. The source for the case of a richly impure person who defiles the temple by entering it remains unclear. Tosfos Arosh suggests that since in all other cases, i.e. where there is awareness at the beginning but not at the end, or the end but not at the beginning, the same means of atonement is used for both the defiling of the temple and the defiling of sacrificial foods. It is logical that also in this case, i.e. where there is no awareness either at the beginning or at the end, the same means of atonement will apply to both. The Ritva suggests that the Gemara might be relying here on that which it derived in 7b from the verse, she may not touch any sacred item and she may not enter the temple, Leviticus 12:4, i.e. that the temple is juxtaposed with sacrificial food, such that the halacha that apply to one who also apply to the other. Alternatively, liability for defiling the temple is based on the verbal analogy that the Gemara drew in 7a between the passage of the sliding scale offering and the red heifer. And if you would say, let the goats of the festivals atone for that which the goats of the new moon are sacrificed, that is not possible. Didn't we say above that the verse states with regard to the goat of the new moon, and he gave it to you to bear the sin of the congregation, which indicates that it bears, i.e. atones for, that sin, but another does not bear that sin. And if you would say that the goats of the festivals atone for that which the goat of Yom Kippur is brought, the Gemara suggests that the goats of the festival should atone for that which the external goat of Yom Kippur atones, i.e. for the defiling of the temple, in which one has no awareness at the beginning, but does have awareness at the end, says Rashi. That is not possible. Didn't we say above that the verse states with regard to the goat of Yom Kippur, Aaron shall bring atonement upon its corners once a year, Exodus 30:10. The emphasis on once a year teaches that this atonement for this case should be only once a year. The Gemara explains, it must be that the goats of the festival atone for cases of defiling of the temple of sacrificial foods in which one did not have awareness, neither the beginning nor the end, because if not, for what other matter involving sacrificial foods could they atone? If you say they atone for cases in which one had awareness at the beginning and had awareness at the end, and one can counter that he is liable to bring an offering to atone for his transgressions, and therefore the ghost of the offerings will not atone for him. If you say they atone for cases in which one had awareness at the beginning but did not have awareness at the end, then one can counter that the goat whose blood presentation performed inside the sanctuary and Yom Kippur itself suspend any punishment that he deserves until he became aware of his transgression. If you say they atone for cases in which one did not have an awareness at the beginning, but did have awareness at the end, one can counter that the goat whose blood presentation is performed outside the sanctuary atones. Perforce, they atone only for cases in which one did not have awareness, neither at the beginning nor the end. The mission teacher of Rabbi Meir says, the atonement effected by all the goats offered as part of the additional offerings, i.e. those of the new moons, festivals and Yom Kippur, is the same. They all atone for various cases of defiling of the temple or sacrificial foods. Rabbi Hanina said, what is the reasoning of Rabbi Meir? With regard to the goat of the festivals in Numbers chapters 28 to 29, the verse could simply have stated a goat, but instead juxtaposed and the goat. But instead it states and the goat, which teaches that all the goats are juxtaposed, this one with that one. As the use of the term and teaches that the second matter adds to the first matter, and all the goats effect the similar atonement as the first one listed, that of the new moon. The Gemara's questions this interpretation. Initially, it enters your mind to explain that the atonement effected by each and every one of the goats of the festivals is derived from the atonement effected by the goat adjacent to it, i.e. mentioned in the passage immediately preceding it. The atonement effected by the Passover goat, from the atonement affected by the goat of the new moon, and the atonement affected by the Shevuot goat, and from the atonement affected by the Passover goat, and so forth. But this is difficult, as doesn't Rabbi Yochanan say, with regard to the entire Torah, one derives a halacha derived via juxtaposition from a halacha derived via juxtaposition, except for halacha concerning consecrated matters. When one does not derive halacha derived via juxtaposition from a halacha derived via juxtaposition. So let's explain that. Shame the maid milomed, where one does not derive a halacha derived via juxtaposition from a halacha derived. Rashi states that this is the case only with regard to a halacha that was derived via juxtaposition. The Gemara in the 5th case of the tractate Zerochim has an extensive discussion about when and whether this is the case for halacha of consecrated matters derived via other hermeneutical principles. The Gemara answers, this is not difficult, because actually the atonement affected by all the goats is derived directly from the atonement affected by the first goat, i.e. the goat of the new moon. The Gemara asks, Rabbi Hanina's explanation works out well for all the goats with regard to which it is written, and the goat. From where do we derive that what the goats of Shevuot and Yom Kippur atone for? As with regard to them, it is not written, and a goat, but simply a goat. Rather, Rabbi Yonah says, the verse states at the end of the passage detailing the goats of the festivals, these you shall offer to the Lord on your festival, in Numbers 29:39. With the verse, all the goats of the festivals are juxtaposed, this one with that one, which indicates that they atone for the same sins. The Gemara challenges, but the new moon is not regarded as a festival. The Gemara refutes this. In truth, the new moon is also called a festival, in accordance with what Abai says with regard to a different issue, as Abai says with regard to the month of Tammuz. In that year, during which the Jewish people sinned by accepting the slanderous report of the spies about Eretz Yisrael, the court made it a full month of 30 days. As it is written, he proclaimed the festival to crush my young men. Lamentations 1:15. Abai understands the verse to mean that by extending the month of Tammuz by an extra day, and by proclaiming the 30th day should be celebrated as a new moon, in addition to the first day of the following month, it emerged that the acceptance of the spies report occurred on the 9th of Av, and not the 8th, thereby defining the 9th of Av as an ominous day for the Jewish people. From Abai's explanation, it is apparent that the new moon is also called a festival. The Gemara continues to analyze Rabbi Meir's opinion. Rabbi Yochanan says, and even though he holds that all the goats offered as part of the additional offerings effect atonement for the same sin, Rabbi Meir concedes with regard to the goat whose blood presentation is performed inside the sanctuary Yom Kippur that it does not atone for their atonement, i.e. it does not atone for the sins that they atone for, and they do not atone its atonement. He elaborates, it does not atone their atonement because, as the Gemara derived from the verse, Aaron shall bring atonement upon his corners once a year, Exodus 30:10, the eternal goat affects one atonement for only one case, but does not affect two atonements for two different cases. And they do not atone for its atonement, because as the Gemara explained, the verse states, Aaron shall bring atonement upon its corners once a year. The emphasis on the phrase once a year teaches that this atonement for a specific case that atones for it should be only once a year. The Gemara adds, this qualification of a man's opinion is also indicated by that which is taught in a Braita. For a case of the defiling of the temple in which one did not have awareness, neither the beginning nor the end, and for a case in which one did not have awareness at the beginning but did have awareness at the end, and for which a ritually pure person who partook of ritually impure sacrificial food, the goats of the festivals and the goats of the new moons, and the goat whose blood presentation performed outside the sanctuary atone. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir. The Gemara knows, but in delineating which offerings atone, I may have omitted the goat whose blood presentation performed inside the sanctuary, and furthermore, when delineating their atonement, i.e. what cases they atone for, he also omitted it, i.e. he did not mention the cases that the eternal goat atones for, which are the cases in which one had awareness at the beginning, but did not have awareness at the end. Evidently, the atonement of the eternal goat is substantially different from the atonement of the other goats. The Mishnah teaches, Rabbi Shimon would say, the goats of the new moons atone for a ritually pure person who unwittingly partook of ritually impure sacrificial food. And for defiling the temple or its sacrificial foods, the goat of the festivals atone for cases in which one did not have awareness, neither the beginning nor the end. And the goat of the additional offering of Yom Kippur atone for cases in which one did not have awareness at the beginning, but did have awareness at the end. The Gemara challenges, Granted, the goats of the new moons do not atone for that which the goats of the festivals atone. As the verse states, with regard to the goat of the new moon, and he gave it to you to bear the sin of the congregation, Leviticus 10:17, which indicates that it atones for one sin, but does not bear two sins. But nevertheless, let the goats of the festivals atone for that which the goats of the new moons atone. The Gemara responds, the verse states, he gave it to you. The emphasis on it teaches that it bears this sin, but no other offering bears this sin. The Gemara challenges, granted the goats of the festivals do not atone for that which the goats of Yom Kippur atone. As the verse states with regard to the goat of Yom Kippur, Aaron shall bring atonement upon its corners once a year in Exodus 30:10. The emphasis on the phrase once a year teaches that this atonement, i.e. the specific case it atones for, should only be once a year. But nevertheless, let the goats of Yom Kippur atone for that which the goats of the festivals atone. The Gemara responds, the verse states once a year, which indicates that it affects atonement for only one case, but cannot affect the two atonements for two different cases. The Gemara challenges the use of these derivations, but when it states once in this verse, it is with regard to the goat whose blood presentation is performed inside the sanctuary that it is written, so the derivation from it should have no bearing on the discussion concerning the external goat. The Gemara answers, the verse states, one goat for a sin offering aside. Thank you very much for listening, and all the best. Bye.